cool.
Thank you, sorry, Jason.
No problem.
Like when you were building a house.
So you so you can theoretically build a house. I could add more cubes here. And oops. And as Stephen, right? Stephen. My brother Stephen. As Stephen was saying, you can parent these objects. So we didn't go over this last time, and it's not super important for 360 video. It'll become more apparent when you're building other things, but I could parent these two cubes together, and they essentially become, if I select the root object, bound together, so they're moving together as one. So this becomes useful if you have lots of objects that you want to grab things. If you ever wanted to parent an object to your hand, when you pick it up, and it's bound to your hand, you can move it around, when you release, you unparent it, so it stops wherever it was. But it's also super useful if you're doing something like building a house. Yeah?
I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I see shaders and stuff here. I mean, are people actually using Unity to do their modeling, or they just, I mean, like I mess with a little bit of, so, and I'm seeing, I'm like, are people modeling a lot in Unity? Because this is kind of the first.
You wouldn't normally model in Unity.
I wouldn't think so.
No, mine has a much better tool set, and 3ds Studio and Blender, all three of those have way better tool sets. But you would import into Unity and then use those models from there. So you could rig them and then do rigging action or animation through it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even do it normally in the animation inside Unity either. I normally do it in Maya. Yeah. So it's mostly just for interaction part. It's introducing the interaction part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would still it doesn't overwrite your tool set. Your current tool set, it supplements it. It allows whatever currently knowledge you have to add into whatever. If you want to make a game, if you want to make a movie. They're making it easier to make movies inside Unity as well.
Yeah.
So if I grab this cube, I can move these two around. So these are just kind of transform things. I can scale. The nice thing about the way it's set up now, if I have a scaled cube, I'll scale them both simultaneously now. So I can kind of have positions based off of where they are here. All right, I don't need cubes though. We have a sphere in our scene. And now right now the sphere that I just put in the scene, which is tiny, is nowhere near my camera, which my camera is way over here, my sphere is over here. I want to make sure they're on top of each other, because that way my sphere is around my head, which is my camera, and I can expand my sphere so that it's something I can look at the interior of. So to do that, I just drag my sphere onto my main camera, and you'll see these position values up here are relative to that parent. If I zero them out, if I have a child on my sphere, yours is probably already set up this way. I think it'll probably say 0, 0, 0 because we did this last time.
Oh, yeah.
So that way, now my sphere is at the same position as my head. So you'll notice that if I change any of these values on the move around the sphere, it's going to change the values of my transform. Now the last part, so the first two parts was this hierarchy, which allows us to select objects in our scene, and you can see them being selected. This last part, the inspector, tells us more about those objects and allows us to change things about those objects or build them from scratch if we wanted to. So our sphere has on it a transform component, and all objects have a transform component. That transform component is just where it is in space. So it contains in it an X, Y, and Z value. Those are just literally as if I'd put numbers equating to where I am, like I am 1 meter from the 0 point. I'm 1 meter. You are 1 meter away from me on the Z axis because you are 1 meter in front. And x-axis would be like that way, and my y-axis would be up and down. So if I wanted to find any point in space, I could be defined by 3 different values. So I can change those. You'll see if I grab this x-axis and move it, you'll see the x-axis value changes. So it increases or decreases based on my movement. Oops. And like that, we've kind of created our first sphere over our head. We did a 360 last time, and we did that just by scaling up the sphere around our head. So I'm going to make this 6 meters basically in diameter. And we have now our camera inside, but you notice that when I go inside, I don't see the sphere anymore. So on the outside, I can see the sphere, and the inside, I can't, and that's just because the faces of the sphere are facing outward. So we use the shader, which we normally wouldn't have to do if we used an inverted sphere, so we could see it from the inside. And that shader just reversed those faces. So don't worry too much about shaders, but we just used it. And to do that, basically all these objects there's like a skin around it that show how it looks, how we see it. So when I add, so right now this is showing a white one. If I create a new material, that material is how its surface is reflected to everyone else, or how they see it. So this new material, I'll call it sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, like Lambert is the same.
Similar. It's not quite exactly the same as Blender and those are all part of the post-processing stack. So you don't get directly to affect them. You do, but it's on the camera itself. So for this sphere, I can drag this material that I just made. Let's change the color. I'll change it to like reddish. And I drag it onto my object. You'll see that it essentially creates that material. So that material is how it's reflected to the world. You'll also notice that I can change the metallic value. So if I change it to extremely metallic and extremely smooth, it's actually going to reflect the world. It's hard to tell, but that's actually the skybox and the sun, which is right there, reflecting on this surface. And it's tinted red, so if I change it back to, let's go white. Oops, where's my white value? Then it will perfectly reflect the sky because I've set those values both. Oops, on my sphere I've set both metallic and smoothness to maximum. Now these aren't super important. This is kind of just a future thing. We're not using this as much today. But the point is that this is deciding what the surface looks like. How the surface is affected is a shader. So shaders determine how the surface of your object is shown to the world. Because obviously the floor right here, which is different, reflects light differently than this whiteboard right here. And so we use shaders to be able to recognize, or materials is what they refer to in Unity, to be able to recognize what they look like.
But if we're going to fill it with whatever video we have, does it matter what the surface looks
Well,
like
that's the
to us
thing.
in the world?
We basically want to cut out all the light, the way the light is interacting with this, and make it more like a TV screen that has its own light source. It's showing itself. So to do that, I gave you this 360 video shader material. And so that is just I just changed the shader type. And now when I drag this on, it creates this gray sphere. And you can see there's no light reflecting on it at all. This is what's called an unlit material. So it's like
You can fill it with anything.
we can put anything on it and it will just show that material. Or actually, maybe let me show you this first. If I put the sphere here, I'll set it to more of a 0 value and I put texture on this. Like, I don't have a texture here. Let me just get something wild from the internet. Let's go with 360 image. Okay, the internet is slow. 360 landscape. Okay, those are cool. Let's just go with any one of those images. This one looks great. Venice. Sounds great. I'm just going to drag this in, bring it into Unity. So now I have this 360 video. I can actually make it on this current. So you'll see it appears, and I can change the way it's reflected. So this is more like a metallic 360 video. So that's obviously not what we want. We want what's called an unlit. So I'm going to change this from a standard shader to just an unlit texture. And now you'll see light's not reflecting on it. It has some built-in light from the texture itself. But it's just, if I turn these lights off, it still has its own light value. That's not super duper important. The important part is that material is what determines the shape and color of its outside. So if you ever think, I want to change what this looks like, you want to change the material. And then from there, you just mess around with the material parts and settings until you feel like you get what you want. So I'm going to change it to a 360 video. You'll see I put it in here. And by default, this has no value on it. I'm going to put this texture on it. This texture is just an image, so it's not a video. But we set up on our sphere last time, we set up that 360 video player, or the video player. So if I add a component here and say video player, this video player is essentially going to handle doing all the 360 video work, doing 360 video work. So last time I brought in this 360 video. We all downloaded different ones. Now I want to use it. I just have to drag it over to my video clip. Oops, oh, that's the wrong one. This thing. To my video clip in the video player component. Because remember, if we want to build up an object, these components are what make up this object. So I have a mesh renderer. That is what determines the kind of like the outer layer of my object. And then I have a mesh filter, which is the data points that make up my object. But really, the video player is what's making it play on top of that object. So I selected the video player. Now if I press play, by default it's going to start playing my video. So it overwrote the original texture. And now I can't move, but we set it up last time to move. So you can see if I go back to my scene, you can see the video playing. If I go to inside of it, it's going to make a little more sense. There we go. You can see it playing.
No. I'm just getting a feel for it.
So that's basically our build. That's how we get our build running. We have our 360 video. We made it last time. Now we want to make something else. Let's make an interaction. So this is where it adds value to something like Maya or 3ds Studio Max, these kind of things, because now we can make kind of player interaction. You press spacebar, something happens. You tap on the screen, something happens. You grab an object, something happens. And we're going to do a tiny bit of code just to see what it looks like and see that it's not really that scary. I promise it's not as scary as the word code sounds. Everyone thinks it's going to be lots of weird numbers and letters. We're just going to do a little bit of code to, I'll show you the really basic version. I'm just going to change the property of my sphere. I'll double its size. So let's double its size. So to do that, I'm going to start by adding my own component to this object. So to add my own component, I just hit add component, and then I can write here double size.
Sometimes it's nicer to watch too, not my mood.
Jason's so good at it. He makes it look so easy.
So double size. I'll do it again. So you guys can watch. How about you watch the first time, and I'll do it the second time, and I'll do it a little, so you can follow along that point. So I'll do double size the script, and then this is just going to be a script that basically you'll see I'll add it, create an ad, and it's going to create this double size script inside of my assets folder. So remember, this is just basically inside of my folder structure. It just added the separate script. And then on my object, it also added, you'll see right here, the double size component. So double size, it's just a script that I've added to my object. And what happens, I'm going to open this up. It's going to open on Visual Studio. This is just what's called the interactive developer environment to make your life easier to develop things. So it's going to slowly open it up. Give it a half second here. Once it's done, it'll be faster.
How much, just again, how much does Microsoft Visual Studio cost?
It's free.
It's free.
So every part of Unity that you normally use is free. So Visual Studio is totally free unless you get the business version. And then the Unity only costs money if you earn more than $100,000 on whatever it is you're using. So if you earn $100,000 and you have Unity, you don't have to pay for Unity. It's only when whatever products you're producing produce more than that. So, so this is double size. You can see the script comes with a bunch of things in it. This is the default value of a script. We're not going to use all these things. The top part is basically just a list of things we could use. Parts of things that we can call on and be like, I need this part. I can use this. The second part here, this class, you'll see ends in this curly bracket. The curly brackets are just used to say everything inside of these curly brackets is part of this class. So double size, which is the name of the class, is encapsulated in this entire section right here. So all the parts inside of it, all the things in here are part of double size, the script that we wrote. So inside that, we have a bunch of things. We have variables here. Now variables are things that you can change, and this is more relatable if I tell you like it's a recipe. So if this is a cake recipe, I would at the top, this would be the name of my cake recipe. So this is vanilla cake. This is essentially the name. So everything beyond, encapsulated between these two curly brackets, the first curly opening bracket and the final closing one, is part of the vanilla cake recipe. What do I need next in a vanilla cake recipe?
Yeah.
I need ingredients, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got.
Flour.
That's exactly right. So my first ingredient would be flour. So these are what are called variables. So like a recipe, you have different amounts of things for different recipes. Variables change. So say I have flour variable, this would be amount of flour. So I could say maybe one recipe that's 1 cup and another recipe that's 2 cups. So I could change this amount of flour variable to represent that value. Now, what else do you do? What is usually the next thing after you have all your ingredients? You have directions, exactly. So that's what our next part is. We're giving a recipe, we're giving instructions out for what to do with these variables. So we would have a public, and this might be a subset of that. So maybe this is combine dry ingredients. So you'll see that again, this theme of these brackets, these curly brackets. So these curly brackets are basically everything between these curly brackets makes up the combined dry ingredients. This is what's called a function. So in combined dry ingredients, I may do something like add flour and sugar. Oops. It's trying to help me make things, but I'm just telling it random words. So maybe I add flour and sugar, and then maybe I add eggs. Not quite a dry ingredient, but it'll cover.
Oh, right.
I'll do, let's say add salt, add baking powder. I don't know, what else? What else is there? There's lots of things.
Yeah.
All right, we should make this cake. So there's one thing to note: to end a line or to end a command in Unity or in C#, you just put a semicolon. So this is say, okay, add flour and sugar. Semicolon says that's the end of this set of code. Or also could say add flour and sugar and salt and sugar and baking powder and blah blah blah. It would basically be a giant run-on sentence. So okay, add flour and salt. Add flour and sugar. Add salt, semicolon. Add baking powder, semicolon. So combined dry ingredients becomes a set of actions. So if I wanted to do this, I would do what is called call combined dry ingredient. So I could say, like another way to say this is I could shrink this all down to just combined dry ingredients. So I'm writing all this code that is part of combined dry ingredients, and just by calling combined dry ingredients, I do all the actions of combined dry ingredients.
And as long as it's in between the wiggly brackets.
Exactly. The two wiggly brackets are basically what say everything in here is combined dry ingredients. So this is true of, so you can see again here, our bracket here, bracket ending here. So everything in here is part of vanilla cake. And now I'm going to write my first script, and all I'm going to do is change each one of these objects. So instead of flour, I'm going to do how much we scale by, right? So that is going to be what's called a float value. So float value is just a decimal point number. It's just declaring, okay, I'm going to use a decimal point number. So I'm going to say this will be scale amount. Instead of flour amount, it's scale amount. And then I'm going to do one little thing in addition to this. I'm going to say public, and that just allows me to see it in the inspector and play around with it a little bit. Now the next thing is, I could even leave this as called combined dry ingredients and use it. This is actually a proper function inside C#. But I'm going to change it to scale object so we can see it as a function. Oh, maybe I'll leave it as combined dry ingredients. What the heck? Now, add flour and sugar aren't proper commands, so I'm just going to what's called comment them out. And by putting those two slashes, it's basically saying this isn't code. This is just so someone else reading this will understand or read it and see it. Like you might write a note to another person that's reading a code, or to yourself, because after you write a lot of code, you go back and you're like, what did I write this for? Then you can write like, oh, hey Jason, future Jason, I wrote this to move this object around. So all I'm going to do in here is give it one command, and I'm going to say scale your local scale. So what that means is, if inside Unity, if I wanted to increase the size of the sphere, how would I do this? You guys remember? There's two ways. You're totally right. Transform, nailed it. So transform, scale, exactly. I can go to transform scale, and I can change this to be 12 12, 12, and that's doubling it. Or I can do what's called multiply, and it was 6 times 2, and Unity will do that math for me. It'll automatically turn that into 12. So you'll see, what do I want to do? Well, I want to change the transform scale. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to get this transform scale off of this object. And this is where the step comes. The step in thinking, and when you get the step, everything kind of starts falling in place. The script that we wrote here, double size, this is the script that we're writing right now, or vanilla cake as we called it. Actually, I have to rename it. It is on this sphere object. So currently we can tell the script, this instance of the script, to say, okay, well, on this object, get the component transform. So it's going to search through all the objects on our transform, or on our sphere, all their components. So it's going to check, okay, is this our transform? No. Is this our transform? Yes, it's our transform. So then from transform, once we get our transform, we want to then get the scale value. So to do that, actually there's a new way to do this. Oh no, it won't let me do that anymore. Won't let me do it? Okay, I'm going to do it the other way. Oh, actually, no, I can do this. Okay. Just so there's less of a step. So I want to get the transform. And then from the transform, to get deeper into the transform and change a different value, I do dot. And then this is where the editor really helps me. It's going to look through the transform and see all the values I can change. So what can I change on transform? Well, I can change the position. I can change the rotation. I can change the scale. And there's even hidden functions that I can't see here. That'll help you a lot in the end. So when I put that dot, it's saying dive into that transform component that we have and either change maybe something like our scale. So we can do that. Local, dot. Oh shoot, it's gonna have to do it the other way. Darn, I was really hoping I wouldn't have to do it. So get that transform component, and then get that local scale by saying local scale. Or I could change the position. So what are some other things here? I could change the position. I could change the rotation. And you'll see some other things. If I just do that dot, there's some other options I can change that'll help me. There's like look at, there's move, there's all sorts of little things. But we're just going to change the local scale. And what I'm going to say is multiply that local scale. So multiply it. Now, because I want to change the value of it, so actually I can say equals. So whatever happens on the right side of this, it will change whatever's on the left side. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to give in what's called a vector 3. So a vector 3 just is that x, y, and z component. So right now you see this is a vector 3. It has 12, 12, and 12. But that's x. You can see the little x next to 12, y next to 12, 12 next to z. So I'm just going to say local scale equals. Let's just set it directly for now. Vector 3. And I'll set it to 1, 1, and 1. And there's one last step I need to take. Because right now there's a function, but there's no way that this function knows to activate. Right? There's no way to say, okay, combine the dry ingredients now. And to do that, I'm just going to do it in what's called the start function. Okay, in the start function, I'm going to just say combine dry ingredients. And start is just by default called. It's something that gets activated on the start of when an object is created. So as soon as I press play, we'll see this guy will shrink down to 1, 1, and 1. So if I press play now, I'm actually going to drag my game out so you can see it separately. So I have my sphere selected. If you watch those scale values, if I press play now, oops, I didn't save. Combine drawing and void start. Oh, I didn't set my scale now. Nope, that's all good. What did I do? Oh, that's right. It's still called vanilla cake. I need to change it back to double scale.
And another thing, that it turned purple because I made that happen in my environment.
Yeah.
Because I could never tell that I was running.
Yeah.
You know, like that happened when we were here last week. We were running, and I was like, I don't know why I can't handle this. So that's why mine turned purple when I hit run.
You can change yours what color it changes, because one thing to note is while you're in play mode, if you make any changes, they won't save. It'll just revert back to what it was before. So if I press play now, watch those. If you watch, oops, apparently not. Oh, it still doesn't like it.
That's the purple. After a while, you just
Oh, I call it double
have
scale. It should be
saved
double
stuff.
size. Oops. There we go. Should fix it. Yep, there we go. Okay. So now if you press play, you'll see these scale values change to 111. There you go. 111, and it shrank down to just be 111. So,
It didn't double the size.
oh no, I scaled it. So remember right here in my combined drawing units, I'm setting it to 111 instead of actually. So that name means nothing. That name is literally something I made up. And it's usually good to name it something that matches what it's doing. Otherwise, the next person who uses your script will be very confused when it says double size and shrinks it. So,
So really, you should call that 112. 112.
I could even say a scale to 1, because it's scaling to 1 value. So even if it was 100, 100, 100, it would scale it down to 1. So no matter what, it's going to scale it to the size of 1 unit. So if I press play again, we'll see, there it goes, it shrinks to 111. If this is 100 by 100 by 100, and I press play, it's going to scale it down to 111. So, like that is the majority of our
But it
program.
also changed the video. What was inside?
Oh, it didn't change the video. The video is now so small that my camera viewport is actually seen outside of the video. So if I scale this up, you'll see it's the same video. It's because the camera, if you can imagine, there's a bubble around my head.
It wasn't a Venus. Venice.
Oh no, that's being done by, you're right, this, you mean? That's being done by this video player component. Because our video player is on start playing the video. If I untick play on awake and press play, it'll stay as Venice. It's still Venice. So the reason that it's changing the screen is because right here where you see this video player, that component we added so that we could play a video, it's by default, if you click play on awake, it'll just start playing the video on that surface no matter what. No matter what scale it is. So all these components are working in concert to do different things. So one of them is scaling it. The other one is playing a video on it. Another one could be moving it around. So you can write tons of different scripts to do various things. Like, okay, every time someone presses spacebar, it doubles in size. Every time you press spacebar, it moves to 3 units or something. If you tap the screen, it could change the video. So if you wanted to change the video, well, when we were getting the component transform, instead, if you want to change the video, you want to get the component video player. And then you can just change the clip. So you just change the video clip. And right there, you immediately changed it from whatever video was playing before to a new video that you want to play. So I want to give you guys just a few minutes to try implementing this. Don't worry if you don't feel like you got it. This is a big kind of like leap in brain thing. You know, trust me, when you sleep on it, the next time you try it, it'll be easier, and every time that happens. So it's just, let's give it a shot. We can work together. Try changing a different value or a different component value. I'll take you through the steps, and then I'll let you go to try changing your own component values.
Okay, I got questions about modeling. It's completely not.
We can bring in some models later and interact with them.
Well, yeah, because I seen Hinge in sort of the little coding note that you had on, and then I'm thinking, is that like you can make things primitive, like primitive objects? But it's a whole
Hinge, you can add basically physics to them.
Yeah, that was my ultimate question, like physics. I'm looking at the
Physics is fairly straightforward to add, yeah.
Nice.
So you can add like basically it's made out of colliders, like a primitive object. you could put it on like an arm joint, and then you could have like a physics that you could drop in.
And then that leads to these other questions that I have both modeling and expecting, like, well, theoretically, I mean, you could add weight to everything, you could add, like, you know what I mean? So,
Yep.
I have questions, but we're not really doing this.
We'll hit some. I thought it's actually all scripting in the end. Not in the end, but it will be. Yeah. All right, so let's
You're the techie person. I've had her do.
Let's do this.
I get her to do After Effects and such stuff that she's never done before, and then she goes through tutorials.
I just watch YouTube videos.
well, let's do this, and then we'll do it together. We're not going to do it once. We're not going to do it separately, and then I'll let you loose to try it again, changing it to something else. So to do it together, I'm going to delete the one that I did, so I'm all at the same point you guys are. I'm going to delete my double size. I'm going to delete it off my sphere. And maybe it's easier if we just, let's sphere object. Okay. So first thing we need to do is we need to create a script. And then we can add it as a component. So we can do this simultaneously, but we'll do it separately this time so you can see kind of how it runs. So to create a script, I'm just going to go into my project window, and I'm just creating like a file, right, that I'm going to type into. So I'm going to right-click in my assets. And then you'll see an option here that says create. The other option, if you don't have command or right click, is you can go to create in the top left of your project window. And you'll see there's an option there. So there's a create up here as well. So if I hit that create, you'll see an option in there that says C# script. Now, the thing about C# is it is a very widely used language. Everything you learn to code for Unity applies to developing separate applications if you want to, or working for other companies that do it. Windows uses or Microsoft uses for the majority of the work they do, and they are inside Vancouver. If you ever want to work for them, they do a lot of C# stuff.
Wow.
So everything that you're learning here, even though it seems big, it starts off as small steps, and then eventually you'll be like, oh, I wonder if there's an easier way to do this, and then you'll be like, okay, wait, I just did it a different way, and now it makes you think about something differently, and then try a different route. So we just want to create a C# script. There we go. It'll pop up and say new behavior. You'll see it as a script, and it allows you to type into it. So just type into it and say, let's call it change property. So we're going to change a property on an object. Cool. Anybody having trouble with the change in property part? And now we want to edit the script. So first we double click on it. And if you double click on it, it will take you into either MonoDevelop if you're on a Mac probably. So try double clicking on it. It'll take a second. And then if you're on a Windows, it'll probably take you into Visual Studio. MonoDevelop is just a different IDE. IDE is an interactive developer environment. It just means you can play around in it. So you'll take a second probably.
It was this one I double clicked.
Yeah. Okay, one of the things you probably want to change is those one word.
Oh.
Change.
So see, because I'm so completely ignorant to Microsoft. What is Apple's scriptwriting thingy?
So when Apple writes, Apple is written in Objective C. They're all parts of what's called C, the C family.
I might be just a computer, right?
No, it might already be open. That's the other thing. Okay, so okay.
Yeah. You know what? All through the ages, you know, we.
I tried to upload
C++
today, trying to clear out my computer so it runs.
Yeah. Oh, you might not have it.
I think I was just
And
doing
C#
it
is a
upgrade.
lot. And if you want, you can install there's a couple of files. I'll make sure I know what that is.
That'd be great. Appreciate that.
Oh, is it supposed to be when I downloaded Unity?
Yeah, it was supposed to come in when you download it.
And a lot of people, they've been very attached to their development environment.
Oh, of course. Mine.
Fun here, let's try.
Oh, I think
Causing you
Stealth mode.
Oh, okay. Stick is not here. That's all right. We can probably find. Right down the line.
Maybe I
Yeah, she's got the.
did I was I supposed to?
I try to keep them.
It was probably one of the tick boxes that maybe you missed it.
Yeah.
It's totally cool. You can just download it. Okay, we can use text edit.
Yeah.
But it won't pop up predictable text or anything.
No, I won't do that. Yeah. So then it looks the same. See, it's just text. So MonoDevelop will prop up predictable text, but it's okay. Okay, we're gonna change this to chain.
They call it a shortcut.
I have friends who swear by text edit though. Or well, Notepad. The same idea. So we can do it in text edit, and then we can play around. I'll be the IDE. I'll check it for any things that I'm missing.
I've been watching a lot of this sort of AWS conference. Everyone's using cloud to do all of their rendering. Right. Yeah. Once it's up, it'll go. Right. I can see how it's happening. We're doing more and more with data. So it's like, yeah, they have more services.
ready to pay attention.
You're ready? Everybody
You
good?
guys ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we're all open and change property. Okay, one thing to note, make sure that the name of your class matches the name of the file. Yours does, we just checked it.
Okay. That was change property.
Yeah, exactly. It should match, including capitalization. So capitalization is it's case specific, which means that if you have a capital, it has to match later when you use it again.
How do you change it if there's a space?
If there's space in there, then head back into Unity.
Okay, got it.
And then click on the file name, and then you can just change it. But you're going to want to reopen it. You got it? Then double click to reopen it, because this will link to an old non-existent file otherwise.
And that happens. That does happen.
It happens all the time. I do it all the time. I misspell things, put things in the wrong place. No matter how long you do this stuff, you're still prone to natural human tendencies. So all we're going to do is, let's say in start, we're just going to say this .get component. Actually, sorry. Let's make a separate function so we can see the function. So let's delete the update function. So from the top of that comment all the way down to the end of the squiggly bracket, we should have now only one squiggly bracket at the top, one squiggly bracket at the bottom, and then a start function with its own set of squiggly brackets. All right, so we're going to make a new function. I'll make a public void, and we'll do alter property with 2 parentheses after alter property. Now, it can't match the name of my class name, so I'm just calling it alter property here. And then a squiggly bracket to say everything that happens now inside of these squiggly brackets is part of alter property. Above the above the square brackets.
Oh, I've never used them
I think that's why they use them in coding.
before. Didn't
They're
even
becoming
know.
best friends.
Of its called a squiggly bracket. Wow. Oh.
So inside our squiggly bracket, we're just going to change the property. So all we're going to say is this, the object that the script is on, dot get component, capital G, capital C, then a less than symbol. And now inside these less than symbols, we're just going to say what type of property we want to get. So we want to get the transform. And this time I'll just move it. Because the transform part is the part that holds that positional data. If I alter things in there, it's changing the position of it. After I have the transform, I need two brackets, two parentheses here. There's just a little quirk. We're getting a function. We're doing an action in here. And then period. This is going to let us dive into the transform. And what do I want to get? Well, I'm going to change the position. So I'll say position equals, and let's move this to some point. I'm going to say move this to a new vector 3. And that point will be at 10, 10, 10, or 10, 10, 10, 1. Let's do that.
So is there a space before and after the equals?
So for the most part, spaces don't do anything in it. So there is a space before and after the equals, but it actually doesn't matter. It can be like this. The only space that's important here is between new and vector.
I like the spaces around the equals because I can read it better.
Yeah, it's kind of a preference thing.
Because everything else is just so many characters. Blah, 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 squiggly, angle bracket, dot, da, da, da.
Yeah.
Like,
So blurs together.
Sometimes you need a little breathing point.
yeah.
So the equal sign is basically saying everything on the right side of the equal sign is now going to be assigned to what was on the left side of the equal sign. So the last thing that we need to do here is we need to call this function we made. And to do that, we're just going to put it in the start function. So between the two squiggly brackets that make up the start function, I'm going to press enter and say alter property to call the function that I want. So alter property is going to call that function, and then two parentheses and a semicolon. That just indicates that it's the function. All right, all right. Now the next important step is to save it. If you don't save it, it doesn't affect anything. So hit Control S if you're on a PC, Command S if you're on a Mac. Or if you're in Visual Studio, sometimes you have to hit Control Shift S, because sometimes it doesn't save it. So to do that, now it's done. If you hop back over to Unity, your file should still be there. And you'll see on the right that it looks a little different. Now at this point, we're going to check something. So you should see on your bottom window the console option. So you have project, game, and then console. See console there?
Yeah.
So select console. Does anyone have any red? Hit the clear button, and does anyone have anything red in there?
Nothing.
Great.
Oh, I just I was thinking it was a touch. What's wrong with it?
Because red means, there's a lot of things waiting for you to do.
The pinball or a beach ball.
Any red columns?
Because of all the big
Wasn't thinking about it. I deleted all my
You're
movies.
so good. I saw.
Oh,
It was like totally.
yeah. Oh, is that good?
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I got some red ones.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Okay,
let's go check it.
Oh, it's just pulling me out. Pulling me out.
Yeah.
My bad stripped out.
All right, cool. This is good. This get component. Okay, there's one extra. So see this curly bracket at the start here. Good, that's good. That's part of all that one. There's one extra bracket here.
Show you, oh, that's closing off that function, that one's closing off that function. Now let's save it,
10,
go back.
10, the stuck if component transform. Awesome. Position, that's perfect. That's fine. That's good for me. Good enough for me. Oh, I know here. This says public should be lowercase too.
You used to always have to do the dance of joy after you got rid of an error.
Okay.
Get rid of it.
Perfect. So now just wait a second. So it updates.
In my case, wait till 5 minutes.
Oh, so these are all things that are.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Like that little exclamation point, like you gotta go back and, yeah, I think I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Alright, let's take a look.
What are you working on with Planet?
At the moment, I'm actually unemployed. I got like a few offers and stuff, but I just like I was
And what were you doing in Japan?
I went to Ghibli Studios. You know, I was looking for some sourcing, some clothing stuff that I have to start recognizing, but mostly just traveling. Like I went to Thailand and Malaysia and all that. So I was up there for I went to Japan first to try to go to the Supreme store because it's a super hot clothing thing, and then you can buy as much Supreme stuff as you can, bring it back to North America, you can flip it and make yourself like super big profit. But I got one shirt. That was all I could get. I'm like, oh my god, I had no idea they're already doing it here. Right? So I had to buy off. It was a whole big thing.
Well, you know for next time when you go back.
Yeah, right. Well, I have to find the launches, and then like, I got to line up for the launches. This time I didn't do it. But no, I was working really hard for a long time.
And now let's go back
My
into.
first project, I was part of a video game.
There it is!
This company
We gave them the same error you
you
had.
teach math to kids on video games.
I
So I was just gonna
Yeah, it's good to see it. It's good to see it.
big chunk of time.
So now you know how to fix it.
And Arduino, it shows up at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the
Working on
different
like,
I know.
So if you double click on that, then it takes you directly to where the error is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's saying
Yeah.
it's
I needed a break.
That's all a big boy.
Yeah.
I know, hey?
Yeah.
So you need-
What's the difference between public and
Not really, but it
Ooh,
seems
you're
to
good.
be every project
Okay,
that
so-
comes up is sort of the children.
But if I don't need to know, I don't care.
Maybe not yet.
Why?
Then I'll don't even know right away.
Maybe
It's,
with the
some of these don't mention, but for now, think of it as if you make a public what's
And
called public
real
variable, you
youth
can change the
and
effect. So that's
aims,
important.
yeah.
Okay. I know these.
Jessica.
Wait,
So
what?
you
You
make-
can change public, you can change.
I don't know, just don't
So if
know
you
about
add,
contract
yeah,
to
if you say
contract.
right
I
here,
know what you
say
mean, it just gets
public.
like feeling so tired.
Yeah. And like me, I'll take, you know, if everything's right,
Float.
you know, I'll take that. And I'll take this one. And
Uh,
let's see what
I
happens.
know, because when like you're a contractor and it a freelancer and then when it rains it pours and then
Yeah.
there's this big dry spell so you know make everything go
Thanks
once.
for filming. Yeah, so when you're ready for like
Yeah.
you're gonna be really good.
Go to the,
Big chunk time,
make
really
this
bad.
object, so it's half this object.
Yeah. I gotta
Trying
get
to
worse.
find those contracts that will start as one ends is really hard.
Yeah. But for the most part, like, yeah, it's ready.
It is.
You'll see that mine never shows up in the
And
changes.
somehow or another, I make it different.
Like animation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I went to like visual effects school, or fig animation, which is like aesthetic creativity. So like,
Oh yeah, because you did games.
Again.
So then you get this value.
so I know a few things,
Can't figure it out.
but the way I think it's like called.
3 o'clock in the morning, you're with your pajamas and then funny.
So primarily, what do you?
Oh, mainly editing,
Oh, yeah,
video
like video?
editing. Yeah, but then I started doing small contracts to TV in like New Zealand for sort of stories up here.
It's addictive.
So I invested in a really nice camera and I've been
Neurological feedback.
excited anyway. my resume, I call it myself a one-person camera op, sort of like a journalist.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, a journalist. That's what I. Because when I joined a union, they wanted me to tick which box I was for my union card, for my media pass, and I just clicked journalist, so it covered all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might as well. I didn't really know.
I think you. I doesn't make it like this is a
It
name,
doesn't
right?
really.
It's a name, yeah.
That's right. I'm not good at asking questions.
But
yeah, this is really cool. It's a whole different world, hey, well, for me.
All right, so we're gonna now apply the thing that we just did.
Here, Jason's gonna take you through it. She came up with a very reasonable way to do this. Right, but reasonable.
So if I select I want to add whatever component I made. I want to make that do whatever it does to that sphere. So we just wrote that to move our object, right? So I want to select the sphere. I'm going to move my sphere. So if I select it, I'm going to go to the bottom of the inspector. So on the right side, just scroll down till you see where it says add component. We can add the component we made in like 3 or 4 different ways. The first way is I can just hit add component and type in the name. So I call it change properties, and you'll see it now appears as the component I can add. And if you select that, you'll see it appears just above our video material right there as change property. That's right here. Yeah, okay, nice. The other way you can, if you added it twice, then you can hit the little gearbox on the bottom right and hit the remove component. So a little gearbox on it. Whoops, I just add it. Darn it. There's this edit. There's a remove component. Will remove it if you have more than one. So I have my change property. The other way you can add it is you can just drag it. If you have it in here, you can just drag it either onto the object in the scene, or you can just drag it into the inspector and you can drop it there. So you see now I have 2. I'm just going to remove mine because I only want 1. Okay. So once it's here, all we have to do is press play now. But let's get to a position where we can see what happens. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to scale down my sphere. So to do that, I'm just going to scale mine because mine's huge. I think you guys are good for size. So there we go. And you'll see what we did is we've changed our position to be 10, 10, and 1 here. So if I press play now, 10, 10, 1. You guys should all give it a shot. Press play. See if yours moves to 10, 10, 1.
Oh,
10, 10, 1. Perfect.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
So it's moved away. And now it's floating in the sky.
Floating beach.
Well, it says, can execute component 2.
Probably use the name of the script.
I know, you show this to people, they get ready.
How did you do that?
She was a roller coaster too.
Oh, I think that was when I was putting my cardboard thing in. Oh, blur, what happened last night?
Somebody from New Zealand.
Sorry, what was that?
Were you a big fan of the Wilbur people?
Oh, not a huge fan, but I love Taika. Like, I've been trying to see Thor for the last week, and I just haven't got it done.
I really good review of it. They said it was very indigenous.
Really?
Yeah, you put a lot of Maori elements.
That's okay. I'll move the tree too. No, yeah, it's here and so
What do you say?
both
Valid Creek, Black Creek, whatever you call it, goddess, the Norse goddess.
Oh.
She's like the colonized indigenous.
see the value change to 10, 10,
Who's
1.
lost her identity and lost her land.
Really?
Yeah, this person did it really cool.
Oh, yeah, wait till you see it.
Oh,
Heard
yeah.
some people say best movie that like best action film you've ever seen.
Right, because he's well, all his films are comedy, so he must bring
Yeah, it's
that,
very comedic too.
that aspect to
And he
Marvel.
acts in it too.
I would be surprised.
Yeah, he plays one of the characters.
Because he was in the Green Lantern.
Okay, we're gonna do it with input now. So what that means is we'll just do it whenever you press down on the button, on a mouse button, it'll change. Let's do change to the video to a new video. So we need to download another video. I think it's called Metal Let me see if I can find it. 360 video metal.
Because there's a sense of humor that's quite sarcastic that not everybody can.
Is this it? No, isn't it? Let's go with. There's metal. There's on the wrong page. Okay. So just Google free 360 video. And it's this one that pops up. So if you do 360 video free, it's the one that pops up is the first one. And just download another video because we want to switch between two. I think I don't have two, so I'll download a second one too. What the heck, I'll download. This is the other one I have, so I'll go with something totally different. Know this. Download.
I'm noticing some nice download speeds here at the CDM. Oh, yeah. You think that they're
What? I think that we might not be on this network.
Oh, on the Game Jam, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not the same speed for the Game Jam one.
But they have a high speed.
Yeah, they had 450 megs upload or download, and then 250 upload.
Yeah.
So where am I supposed to find one? In the gallery?
Okay, sorry.
No.
Hit back one more time. Hit back one more time.
Stephen had said. I didn't know that before. I just know that they do have a fiber connection. And I don't know, because they do work with some of the LA companies. Yeah, I would imagine.
So I can select one.
No, our Wi-Fi, the one that we're, the guest one is not canceled. Unfortunately.
Oh, it didn't even search.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Cool. Okay, so you can find one of those that's down one you haven't had yet.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's not really critical for me because it's sort of like sometime, some point. Actually, I think I'm going to spend some leaving with technology.
All right, it's the same.
There you go. Well, and we've got this session recording so that you can go back and redo it. Yeah, well, that would help, but I think this still comes down to coding. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So like that.
Yeah, it's still fresh.
Toe brush?
There's so many
Brush,
online.
What?
This looks like, yeah, like.
But yeah, they brought this guy in from Bulgaria, and he's like supposed to be some sort of famous graffiti guy, and then no one was standing around him. And then I don't know, because he was super meticulous. But I love, well, you can barely see it, but it's almost like, yeah, there it is, a little interactive tool there, allows you to kind of color pick and something.
Yeah. This is you in there?
Yes. But see, yeah, I'm interested in more of that.
You can use the image that you create in the article. No, create in Tiltbrush.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? I seen it as an application because I'm like, as I'm using it, I'm thinking this could totally come in handy in art. Or, you know, I'm not sure how you export some of the modeling though. I would imagine you'd have to use like a brush or something.
No, you can export the model. You can export the whole model.
Because I was curious, like for that particular toe brush, I mean, it was just like paint and stuff. But I'm thinking, if you could like
There's another one called blocks, and you can like scale little blocks, scale out the world. You can build something.
because I've seen it so hard. Like,
Or like a big, like.
How did I just import it in my?
So once you've got the video,
Because as long as you know that.
How did I do it last time?
once you've got the video, it should show up in your downloads. So you can either find it in your downloads, and then you just want to drag it into Unity, and drop it, or you can go,
System and system.
or you can go assets,
Oh yeah.
import new asset, and then find it on your desktop. So wherever the heck you put it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry. I
Oh no, totally cool. Okay, so everyone has 2 videos now, right? 2-ish videos.
Yeah.
Because now we are going to change ours through mouse button. So reopen the script that we had, our change property script. And we're, actually no, let's do a new script. Because otherwise it might get confusing. I'm going to leave that one fine. It's fine the way it is. I'm actually just going to remove that component from my sphere though.
Which one, sorry?
So find your sphere, and then find your change property script. The bottom right, if you go to the right side in the inspector. So select your sphere. Go to the right side, drag down to the bottom, and you should see your change property script. Just click the little gearbox next to it. So click on, there's a little gearbox in the top right of your change property. Select that, and you'll see an option that says remove component. Select remove component, and it'll just disappear.
Could you just uncheck it and just leave it there?
You could do that too, yeah. If you uncheck it, that's called disabling it, and it won't act.
Right. Okay, I'll remove that.
Cool. So now we're gonna write our own script, another script. Anybody having problems still?
You wanted just to remove the change property script altogether, right?
Yeah, you can also just disable it if you want.
Okay. So yeah, if you have 2 applied and both checked on.
Well, they're both just setting it to the same value, so it won't make a difference. You could add 1,000 if you wanted.
Okay, so my text.
All right. So close that one. We're gonna open a new one. So now we're gonna create a new script. Let's right-click in our project window, or go to Create, and select C# script, and we'll call this one Change Video. Make sure it's one word, change video, no space, and normally you can do what's called camel case and then capital C, capital V in this case. So change video, boom, now I have my script. I'm going to open it up. So you're going to want to open yours and text it. So what you can do is right click on the reveal and finder. And then right click on that one. On that change video, see if that's yes. Nice, perfectly named. And go open with. Other, and then slide on the bottom. Edit. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, so once we're inside, anybody missing the inside part? Oh, we're missing Colin.
Oh.
I'll wait a little bit.
He's in his video.
He got trapped. He went into VR. Well, actually, I can just help him directly with it. I'll head over there after while everyone's messing around with playing with it. So, if we're making a cake, we need variables. If we're changing a video, we need the video to change it with. So, to do that, we're going to go to the top of our options up here, just below the class, and we're going to make a public video clip. And actually, we can't do this yet because we actually have to import a library. So at the very, very top, remember when I said we could use parts of these libraries up here? These are called libraries. We have to press enter, and we have to make a new one called using Unity Engine .video. So it's just this line I added up here. Using Unity Engine .video. That allows us to use the video clip variable. And then basically that'll make more sense in a second once we use it, actually see it in use. So down in our class now, we want to say public video clip, new clip. And I'm going to save that. And this is our variable. This is what we're using to make what we want to make. So we're going to make a new function called, at the very bottom, write a new function called public void change video. And all the parts of the function, remember, are these parentheses and these curly brackets. So you notice I put a bunch of extra enters here. End lines don't change anything. I'll come over and give you a hand, Colin. I'll just make sure everyone's at this, once we're at the next stage, and then I'll pop you over. So once you have this new function, we want to create a if. This is called an if statement. Actually, I'll catch Colin up first, and then because there's going to be a little bit of a complicated part.
Jason, do you have the name of your class change video and that function change?
Oh yeah, you're right. I have to
Oh,
change
it's okay.
that. Yeah, change the switch video clip.
I'll do it. I'll do it. So I do Unity development on my Surface as well.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so you can definitely, but I'm sorry that you don't have all the files from last week. That's
You know what? What's gonna happen with me is I'm gonna go home and get updated on everything.
Yeah.
Because I did not, obviously I thought you would be able to import your environment.
Yeah.
And I have environment. So
It's gonna be so good.
So,
It's gonna be so good.
I was looking at how to bridge.
That is so
Now I'm like,
great.
okay, now I get it. Now I know how I can generate.
Okay, good.
So this is what you do.
What I did is I just changed this name so that it was different than the name of the file and name of the class. The file name and the class name have to be the same. This function name or method name should be different because there's this special thing that happens if you use the same name. It's all really. It's very, very, very interesting the way that they make it all work. But you would never guess. You know what I mean? It's not intuitive. So I just changed that for him just so that he's, I think, right would do a control S to save. Yeah. You can tell your file isn't saved if it has a little asterisk, a little star up there. Lots of times I make changes, I forget to save. I'm running my program, I'm like, well, that didn't work. I make more changes. Well, that didn't work. I just not save it. So yeah.
Is this your computer?
Yes.
Is it just really powerful?
It's
actually very logical.
Oh, it's so logical. It's infuriating. You know what I mean? Like it's doing exactly what you said. But we never do exactly. You know what I mean? But it's like, I am taking you so seriously. And literally, if you say, that you want to do this thing that makes no sense at all, I'll do it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this one is actually sort of recommended for if I was really running VR applications with like a Vive connected up to this, and I've done it. It's pretty good. But you know what it's like when your laptop's working really hard and you hear your fan?
Yeah.
This fan, it sounds like a helicopter's taking off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's so fun. Just dig the lights on the sides.
It's just a powerful one because I spotted one on a movie actually. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
hey, that's the same
Yeah.
laptop we had.
I think it's a little cultish. You know what I mean? Like as in Alienware. We're so look, like
And
that's what it looks like, a little alien. Is it? Oh, is that what they? Okay, there you go. Yeah. The absolute. Yeah, the little alien, as opposed to it's kind of the.
Do that again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She really likes the alien.
Oh, I didn't do that.
Oh, yeah.
What we can do is say, here we are learning a lot about aliens.
Different.
Alienware.
Awesome.
Oh, no.
Awesome. Cool beans. So there's one thing that I missed. Mine was called change video. Yours is probably change video too. It needs to be change video clip because we have the name of our class can't match the name of our function. I'm the worst at naming things, so yeah. You don't want to know. Okay, so inside this function, we're going to use our first kind of logic statement. So our logic statement is going to be if, and we're just going to say if I'm pushing a button down, then we're going to do this thing. So if input dot get input dot get, darn it, it's not accepting. Give me 1 second. I can't remember. I think it's get mouse down. So input dot get mouse down parentheses 0. That's just saying 0 means the first mouse button. So there's 2 mouse buttons right on mine, or 3 actually. If you press down on the main mouse button, it's 1. Right click is 2, and then middle button is 3. It's actually 0, 1, and 3.
Actually complicated.
0, 1, and 2. My bad. So input dot get mouse button down parentheses 0 parentheses. That's just saying if I just press the mouse button down, do some action. And now all I'm going to do is once we press the mouse button down, this also actually applies to, by the way, because Unity is built to, to multiple different devices. This also applies to phones. So input.get mouse button down 0 is technically a touch on the screen. So if someone touches the screen, then I'm going to say this dot get component I'm going to get the component that is what is the component I'm getting? Oh, video player dot clip is going to be equal to our new clip.
We're just noticing those open squiggly and closed squiggly around the if too.
Oh, right, good point.
That's exciting.
So you will notice I use my squiggly brackets again because everything that happens inside of these squiggly brackets happens only if the if statement is true. So only if someone's pressed the button down, then things inside of these squiggly brackets happen. Because I wouldn't want to change my video player video if no one's pressing the button down. If no one pressed the button down.
If the click is held down, then the thing's inside the button.
Yeah, it'll action. So if, in this case, well, get mouse button down just means the first time the mouse button is pressed. So immediately after it's been pressed down. It's not the first time, sorry. It's every time you press down, there's 3 stages to a mouse click. There's the moment you press it down, there's while you're holding it down, and then there's when you release it. So when you say get mouse button down, it's the moment you press it down. So it'll activate every time you press down the mouse button. Okay, I'm going to close and reopen Visual Studio. Just give me a half second here. I need to make sure that's right. Because it lost my library. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's right. Oh, no, it's not get mouse button down. It is oh, it is. What did I write wrong there last time? Did I write get mouse down or get mouse button down?
I think you have
Just get mouse down.
Okay, change it to get mouse button down if you have get mouse down. Cool. So now save it. Control S. Go back into Unity. Okay, sorry, one more thing before we go back into Unity. My mistake. We need to put this function inside the update loop. So just go into the update loop, which is this update function here, and put change video clip. Is that what we call it? Change video clip. Yeah. And then 2 parentheses around it. So between the 2 squiggly brackets that are part of update, we want to change video clip. That's going to call our function. I'm not going to dive too much into video update yet. And then save it. Hop back into Unity. And now we have our change video script. So check your console. Everyone check your console to make sure there's no errors. 3 errors. 3 errors are usually 1 error.
I got one
So
here.
double click on that, it'll take you to it.
Warnings in an error.
Okay, so see that squiggly bracket down?
No, you can double
That means
click
that
on,
change video clip is only here, so you want to delete that one. That's squiggly bracket above the if statement. Yeah.
When I was noticing it, it was like, where did that go?
So delete that one, and it goes after the if statement. So that if statement is part of change video clip. After this. Yeah. So this if statement is everything including these 2 curly brackets. So press enter, and then close the squiggly bracket. Yeah, that was right. That was right. Yeah.
oh, I may
And
have.
change that from audio clip to video, or just clip.
But let's click on this one, just because this is one we'll definitely
Lowercase.
text. The little yellow one.
Fantastic. So that is the actual clip that's playing, and then this is the new clip that we're gonna add.
Oh, good for you. Good. Wow. So,
Yep.
yeah,
So we
no,
click on these
seriously,
two
so you
there.
just need to close squiggly
There.
with the F.
Cool.
Great
Great job.
Oh,
Or let's see here.
I can't
Unexpected
remember.
symbol using. Okay, that's easy
No,
enough.
you have one open.
The
and
using
you
is a
still
capital
have
U, not
closed
a
that
lowercase.
open one.
Oh,
If that
here.
makes sense.
Should've
Like opening the door and then you got to
Wait, let's
close
see.
it. It has to
Public
come
should be
after
lowercase p.
the line that says
I think
this.
it might have done that on its own.
Because of the text.
Open one there.
Exactly.
So what was it? That's good.
I want to try all that higher.
Yeah, is for that one.
Whatever I didn't download.
There. It says the indentation to show you that it's the same indentation
Perfect.
as your S.
Isn't that beautiful?
To say, I am closing that one, and this one is at the same indentation as the last
New
one.
clip. Okay, let's do this one.
Oh, it's even telling us.
Well, the open one is on
Yeah, it
the
tells you
other
which
line.
line it's on.
Sometimes a lot of people like to put that on a new line.
I know,
Just
never
so
got
that-
on a new one.
Okay, so then it jumps out at you as open and close. Good for you. Good for you, yes.
Okay.
Let's see if you can say that and see those yellow ones go right. How are these shoes from? Oh, I see, okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Oh,
Oh, so you know what that goes in. Did you get it going?
I don't know.
Oh, I did.
Okay, you've got.
Oh, those we just corrected. I had some errors.
Okay, but you think you've got this?
Wow. I love watching him. I didn't think I could really do it by myself.
Well, you don't have to yet.
I just want to copy and paste somebody else.
Yes.
I know.
We already ate all
You didn't have any bread or chocolate?
Actually, I'm gonna have to run. Yes.
Yeah,
Are you
no.
okay?
I had a car.
I don't have a car. We don't have a great car right now, so I don't think I'll bring it over.
Thank you.
Oh, I know what you mean. I have a motorcycle that I have to actually hit it sometimes because the connection on the battery's loose. So I'm like, this is random. This is not good. This is not the way it should be.
How we used to do it with that television.
I know, just give it a good hit. Turn it with the pliers. Okay, do you still have yellow on yours?
Yellows are fine.
Yellows is cute. Oh, I had Jason says yellows are fine.
Yellows are probably just debug errors. And
They have my hair. The reference script on this behavior is
Let's
missing.
see.
that means maybe the script was moved or deleted or has a different name.
Okay. So we've got change video. As the name of the.
Yeah, she was.
Oh, very.
So the class name could be different. Class of the file name.
Change video.
Was that the clip?
Is the class and file name different?
Same to me.
Bill Gates was on Jimmy Fallon and his dad was Matt on his desk. So he took a sticker and
Okay.
Oh, good to see you, Loretta.
Have fun out there on your world trip. Have a big trip.
I don't know your email.
Yeah. So, Joe, we filmed another one.
private science separate for them.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the episodes, a lot of the land and the place where the kids were was at her farm, her husband's farm.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Hopefully,
I would
yeah,
like to
yeah.
come in, yeah. I just try like the same type of way. So we'll see.
Well,
Oh, no,
that's
no. Okay.
Pierce
It's
Girls.
whatever this
Oh,
one.
Pierce Girls is different.
I don't know.
Party Times are
It's
Oh,
gonna be late.
okay.
March.
Yeah.
So we didn't quite remove it correctly.
Yeah.
We need to
Okay.
talk about.
Probably whatever.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, so now
Should
we're
we
going
try
to now we're gonna play. No, we do one more piece.
One more piece. Oh, one more piece.
So everybody has to add this component to their camera now, or to their sphere.
Right.
So on your sphere, we just need to add that script. If you can remember how to do it, that's great. Just select the sphere.
Enthusiasm than kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just
What do you
like
think
crazy.
we add
I just
components?
I don't want to put any pressure on them, but
Oh no,
have a look at the script. Maybe take a look at the script. Maybe that would help in the animation so they know how cool it's gonna be. No, they're all on the base camp. So let me connect you up. You might. Did they link you to the base camp?
Yes.
Okay, I'll link you on base
Oh.
camp because.
So once you add it, we need to tell it which script to use, which clip to use. So we're almost there. Just hit add component, change video,
No.
and then you're gonna see.
Change video.
Then you're gonna see it says new clip, and it's none right now.
Yeah.
So we just want to change that from none to our clip.
Just drag your new clip in there.
Exactly. So drag the clip that you have. Where'd this one I added? I think this is the one I added. No. This it? Yeah, that's it. Drag in that clip to where it says new clipping. You'll see it fills it up.
I did. Not that I didn't believe you.
Now press play and.
Okay.
No, sorry. Here's up. Add your thing first.
Did we add yours?
Select the sphere.
So you just put it on the.
Oh right, and my
If you drop it into that one little box that has the name of the script where it sits, and right after
Change video.
that's right.
video. Yeah, in the
There it
box that's associated with
Oh.
new clip.
Nice new clip and none video.
Good. Okay, you're gonna be able to see some of these.
You need to now.
So,
So you hit that
Oh.
little dot beside it and you can find it.
Oh, no, these ones. I got some oranges.
Oh.
I can't eat any of that stuff. I took one of the ones.
Here's the new one.
All right, double click on it.
You brought that cake. So you guys want to take it home. It's nuts if you would. And he has got a bunch of kids, so there's not much left in here.
I had a bunch of hungry.
you're gonna watch
I
it.
should go eat it that
No,
way.
Did you see? She was running the version of it. Oh, 6 kids! Oh, congratulations!
all.
So no wonder your kids love this. So Gina, did you run that? You just.
So now if you guys press play,
They got 8 kids. You guys got, they got 8 kids.
I didn't
you should see it, and then if you press on the screen, it'll change to the new video.
Who's created
I think what happened is press play.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think
You're right,
still
yes.
moving it, so you select your
Where did
sphere.
your, but there's not much left.
Okay, you're still.
No,
It'll
yeah.
change properly.
Anyway, alright, so we should still talk, I've got to figure out if
Yeah.
she wants to, if not, then we have to try to figure something else.
Oh, I see. Yes, yes. That'd be really good.
Where's your spear?
Cool.
Well,
they're talking-
too.
They're talking January.
Well, now that we're changing it to
Let's
this,
just shoot, I thought February, but actually we're talking, apparently they have on schedule that.
You know, if it's important and it all works out, she can
Cool.
just stay and have some movie.
Oh, sweet.
To be honest, with fighting, and she went, and we didn't shoot.
Well, we don't know.
So,
Yeah, we can get.
I mean, she didn't do the shot scene.
Yeah,
She
that's
shot
sorry.
scene.
On that sphere for sure.
But yeah, I mean, things might change when fire arrives and maybe we'll all start talking again.
So I
Well,
just did
you
a
want to
video.
welcome your daughter?
I just
Okay, good.
so select
All
your
right.
sphere.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
Yes, look at that kid.
It's just a semi.
Right, yeah. No, we can do that. Okay, how would we trip you on? Susanna, I guess you'll be safe. Yes. Oh, good. Is she on part, you know, Wednesday? Where?
Yeah, that's the
Oh, I'd love to, but I've got so much work to do.
I always have
I know. Okay, let's drag this. Oh, did you do the right? Let's drag it in this after. There. Wow. And see it is falling. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Great, yeah. Hopefully we can talk some more this
Yeah,
morning.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Ways to make sure that.
And, you know, Jason, you're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
It's so easy. And Yvonne, just for even putting this together, we really appreciate it.
My
She's so enthusiastic.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I just want to come here every week. Okay, so it's out. So now it's an asset. Okay.
Yep.
And now let's click on the sphere. And let's drag it into the new flip, or drag it onto the sphere, whichever way you want to go. Yeah, I find that I like it. Right? Oh, good. Okay. Now.
Sorry? I unfortunately do have to leave relatively quickly.
Oh, into video.
I'm flying tomorrow to Israel, so.
Okay.
At work, I have one of the companies that contracts me is working out there, so.
How long of a flight is that? Go down. 13 hours.
I have no clue. I don't know because I haven't had time to even look. I just now checked on it. I haven't even looked at my tickets until now.
Oh my
Lucky, I
god.
just got back from here.
Yeah.
Cold, like I'm still cold. I'm still cold. I was dealing with some plus 32.
What?
Yeah.
It's plus 32?
Yeah, and then I came back here, and then I've been wrapped up in this blanket. I'm like, you're at home?
No, I know. Me neither.
Damn.
Yeah. I don't even like going outside at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
you know,
my
it was
neighbors
hot.
Awesome, possum. So I was kind of hoping to build it, but unfortunately I don't think I have time. I have to get up super early tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah. But when we do this again, we should set it up so we can get it on your phones too.
But we've got, did it work? Did you click on it and it changed? Yes. Because if you've got an if statement working, the kingdom is yours.
I mean, programming really comes down to a whole bunch of if statements just sheltered by different things.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
My pleasure.
Okay. Now I'll upload the video.
Oh yeah, we gotta stop that.